Welcome back to Curse, Code, and Crown, a live play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition podcast featuring a fully original world and campaign. I am the wizard Cronox, observer of time. Curse, Code, and Crown features our regular voiceover artists and improvisers, Laura Hamstra as the Orc Countess Ida and Princess Gwendolyn, Tyler Hewitt as Makka Deathcap, and Ryan LaPlante as Duncan Danno, alongside our dungeon master, the incredible Tom McGee. So get ready for an adventure including thrills, chills, and hope for a brighter tomorrow. It's time for Curse, Code, and Crown!
Duncan, before you stands a relic of a life that at this point seems about as distant as a life can seem. You recognize the figure of Hadrian Kin Elos, formerly a high-ranking captain of the Dawnbreakers. But this first captain business is new and somewhat strange, given that you have been declaring yourself such for a while now. Seeing someone kind of fall out of that period of time, also still looking very much like an Orwellian Dawnbreaker, is jarring, to say the least. Where your clothing now is, of course, more patchwork, having replaced many pieces of your initial gear over the course of your travels. His, though worn, scuffed, and somewhat damaged, is still very much sort of a classic Dawnbreaker outfit, though you can see he has taken the efforts to conceal it under kind of some light burlap and other things to just kind of not have blazingly obvious royal livery in a strange land. But nevertheless, very much a part of the institution as you remember it, kind of almost the ideal Dawnbreaker as you remember him. I think you would have had some interactions with him, and we'll talk about what those were in a moment. But generally speaking, like pretty straight shooter. Amongst the kind of lazy and to some extent corrupt Dawnbreakers you remember, he really did kind of seem like, you know, the last good cop trying to clean up the dirty department. But also, he was better at falling in line than you were. So while you were gradually kind of regulated out of the palace and kind of into the docks and some of the more dangerous places, he continued to serve kind of in the Dawnbreaker Corps proper. Though you got the sense that he always tried to do the best with whatever position he was given, he still was very much within that system. Nevertheless, it makes absolutely no sense that he's here. Gwendolyn, you have a similar reaction in that it's strange seeing Palace Dawnbreakers again. And also, it's been so long that I think, to some extent, Duncan has become the Dawnbreaker in your mind. Having a sort of a harsh physical reminder that may not be true is odd. But odder still is the fact that he recognized you, because as you understand it, no one outside of Orville has any conception that you're still alive, let alone you're inside the armor. For Ita and Makka, it's weird seeing humans, seeing more humans. There are... with this sort of small cart that you found in this the small fire, there are four humans and a gnome. But outside of Duncan, you haven't. And Makka, obviously, you met a number of humans in your adventures through Orville and Byproduct. But beyond that, there's been no human presence that you've encountered. So this is very strange. And Ita, for you, I think, again, just being a creature of logic, you would have to assume that Duncan is what a Dawnbreaker is, because you've only met one, and that's what that is. But suddenly seeing a stark contrast is, I think, a bit of a shock, particularly given that, you know, this man has none of the swagger or flair that you so sort of associate with Duncan. In part, and this wouldn't be anything Ita would know, in part this is because not every Dawnbreaker is a duelist. But to her, I think it would be, if you just assume that all Dawnbreakers are kind of like charming rogues with, you know, a flash of the cape and a quick pun, to see this kind of incredibly austere military bearing, standing tall, very seemingly grounded and controlled, where Duncan is all like fluid move. If Duncan is water, this guy's rock. Like just very, very solid stance. I think it's not earth-shattering to her, but I think it would definitely be strange because it's just a new thing. But given that Duncan, you and Gwendolyn, you are both the most affected by this, I will kind of give you two the first response. As you recall, Hadrian has greeted you as you approach the campfire and the small cart off to the side of the road, and has just identified Gwendolyn as the princess.
Duncan would take a step back, playing his kind of traditional role as more bodyguard than person in charge here. He doesn't know how these guys have landed on the ground and will be innately suspicious about how they're here / where Orville is. But he'll watch from the shadows, I think, more and let Gwendolyn deal with troops that are still sworn to her. He's free of those oaths. They're not.
Mm-hmm. And I think Gwendolyn, her initial instinct was to say kind of like, oh my God, yes, me, like, you know, someone who recognizes me. But I think very quickly she's reminded of like the betrayal that happened on Orville, and she doesn't know who all was involved in that and how deeply it ran. So I think she's gonna, I think she'll just respond saying like, wait, princess, where? And she kind of like looks dramatically, like very obviously around, like either side of her and behind her.
Duncan's just going to put his face in his hands. This is the worst gamble he's seen anyone pull off in a while.
Yeah, can you roll me a deception check, please?
You are the princess. Gwendolyn.
Yeah, it's a 5.
Cool. Well, it would have been great, but Makka said his thing. Hadrian kind of smirks at that, sort of shooting a glance to you, Makka, and then he looks back to you, Gwendolyn, and just sort of again with bemusement, but also still a good degree of care and I guess I was going to say reverence, but that's not the right term.
Respect.
Maybe? Thank you. Yes. He just says, perhaps I should admit I have you at a bit of a disadvantage, Your Highness. And he pulls a gem from his pocket. And Duncan, I don't think you would really identify magic items at a distance.
Unless it's something that's related to the Dawnbreakers, which he would obsess over, want to know everything about. Regular magic, he doesn't know shit.
Yeah, it's not. Gwendolyn,
he's got a glowing rock.
Yeah. Gwendolyn, you can roll me one if you want.
Sure.
Makka, you could as well. This would be Arcana.
What's this for me?
Arcana.
Tom, also Arcana?
Yeah.
Okay. 12.
Okay.
Dirty 20.
Dirty 20. All right. Makka, you've certainly seen these before. This is a gem of true sight. These are relatively simple enchantments. They aren't common by any stretch, but they're also not rare. If that, not in terms of like where they're listed in the DMG, but in terms of
they're expensive, but not
in the world of Gren. Yeah, they're things that are common enough to see. I guess in like Harry Potter terms, would be like the equivalent of like a broomstick or something, where it's like lots of people have them. They're still really expensive, but like they exist in the world. And Bleen in particular has certainly dealt with export of a lot of these because they were an easy enough magic item to kind of sell. It's also, I don't think you would know this, but Gwendolyn, you might. It's a way for nobility to feel like they're magicians without actually learning anything, because it's an easy trick. So he holds it up and he says, "This stone allows me to see things that others might miss. We've been making much use of it since we landed here in the down low, but it would seem that it has revealed something about your nature that you are somewhat reluctant to share, so I and my companions are willing to continue the ruse if that is what you desire, Your Highness."
Well, all right. Okay. I mean, sure. Okay. I guess if you know it's me. But can I use that gem for a minute? Because like that'll let me know that, like, you're who you say you are. And then we can, like, continue this with some, like, honesty. Because, like, to be quite frank, a lot of shit went down on Orville. And I don't really quite know what's going on yet with everyone that was on Orville, who got down, who stayed up there, who was infected by the Sin Kai and what's... So...
Also, how you got down and what you're doing here are a bit of a question mark, but apparently she wants to do the gem thing first.
I just figured, I look at Danno, like, I just figured it will answer a lot of questions rather than, like, going through, like, you know, an interrogation, like, you know?
A woman who was sitting on the cart, smoking a pipe, kind of leaps down. She's wearing sort of a heavy duster, so like a long coat, made of kind of a rough leather. She's got a pair of goggles, kind of resting on her forehead, and is wearing one of those leather sort of aviator caps from like the 30s and 40s, and you can just see like kind of just a spark of like pink hair kind of sticking out from the corners. So she leaps down and she just says, "Well, you know, it seems to me that you know, if we're asking questions about what happened on Orville, the talking suit of armor and the missing Dawnbreaker and the giant turtle guy might have some answers that we want too. So let's be careful about the accusations we're tossing around here, okay? We've had a pretty rough ride of things ourselves." And Hadrian like holds up a hand and looks embarrassed in that way that only a properly austere person can. And honestly, having based him on Lance Reddick, like, it's that level of just like, just taking a second and for opening his eyes and saying, "You'll have to excuse Jasmine. She is correct. We have seen, as she put it, some shit since we left Orville, but..." And he turns and he just says, "Miss Dean, I warned you in advance that you must let me take lead in these situations. Your temperament is not ideal for such things." Then he turns back and he says, "Again, you have my apologies. Princess, this gem came from the treasuries of Orville. Given that those treasuries are the property of the royal family, it is, of course, yours. You may use it as you see fit." And he hands it to you.
All right. And I take it.
Yep.
Does anything happen, like, when I look at them all?
Yeah,
I don't know how this works.
Well, it's an item you just got, so you will learn.
Yay!
So it is a gem of seeing. It has 3 charges. As an action, you can speak the gem's command word and expend 1 charge. For the next 10 minutes, you have true sight out to 120 feet when you peer through the gem, and it will regain 1d3 expended charges daily at dawn. So to answer your question from the end of last session, when do I get my toys? Now. You get your toys now at the beginning of the next session. Never forgive, never forget. It's been months for us. I know it's been.
Hey, I didn't ask.
Yeah, that was aimed at your character. Yes, it's Hadrian used 1 charge. They'd already used an additional charge earlier that day, so there's only the 1 remaining. But you get it, and I think for the purposes of you, we'll say we can skip the command word just because I think, given that you're a haunted suit of armor, it's basically almost like touching metal to something that's already got a bit of an electric charge. Like the power can literally just flow through you out of it. You don't have to be like, "Hey, listen, I need to see some things." That said, if your companions are to use it, they would need to use a command word of some sort.
I think even though it's like a kind of an automatic thing, I think Gwendolyn would just like hold it and be like, look at the gem and just say like, "I am the rightful heir to the throne of Orville. Reveal the truth." And would assume that that's like
great.
All she needed to do.
Yeah, we'll say that "reveal the truth" then is the command phrase that locks to it. But we'll also kind of take this as like a, "Hey, you got a previously enjoyed device. Like you have to give it a new password." So holding, what would you like to look at? Because basically you hold it up to your eye. Given that you don't have physical eyes,
I want to raise my hand. She does have that little mining lamp. Could she put it in the lamp and have it wave for her?
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Ooh. Would Duncan suggest that, or Ryan, are you suggesting
That's
that?
Ryan saying an option for Laura to consider, not Duncan telling Gwendolyn how to use it. For him, you've just received a rock. I don't even know if he believes it's real.
All right, well, then Hadrian will step forward as you're kind of putting it in front of your face and kind of moving it around awkwardly and like holding it up to like the eyes of the mask.
Yeah, I like basically like kind of like put it in my hand. I'm like thrust it forward. Like, does that do anything?
Well, actually, that would, because by thrusting it forward, you can see enough through it that I think it's like looking through a hole in a wall where you start to like kind of see things differently. So you'd be able to figure it out. Again, the weird thing is you can see. We've determined. So I think, and yeah, we can fix it later. But for now, just holding it out. What are you trying to determine?
I'm trying to determine if Hadrian is who he says he is, and I don't know how much I can see, but I want to see if he's being honest.
Okay.
I'd like to know that.
So true sight is a little bit different than that, but here, give me one sec.
Let me know.
Yeah, so you can see things as they actually are. So you notice secret doors hidden by magic. You can see the ethereal plane. And so it's more for like detecting if there's stuff. So honestly, what you can see is there's no like Sinkai business, like, you know, he doesn't have like the suit tucked away under a shoulder pad or anything. All of these people appear as they are. The gnome has glowing tattoos under his armor that seem to be magical enhancements of some sort, along with kind of a vaguely Mike Tyson face tattoo that's glowing, that just appears like an old faded tattoo, but with the true sight lens glows with kind of a bluish brilliance.
Okay.
All the tattoos have different colors glowing on them, but other than that, you can certainly see some magical resonance off some of the things in the cart. But no, he otherwise you see what you see.
Okay. I think if we want to get it into my little lantern place, I think it's Gwendolyn's kind of holding it, like goes to put it away, realize she doesn't have a pocket. Her backpack's kind of awkward to like get out, and so she just pops it in there for the time being.
Right. Yeah, just wedge it into the candle, the candle nub. Fantastic.
And just said, "All right, okay, so you are who you say you are. We may proceed." Does like a sidelong look at Duncan.
For the first time in a long time, Duncan has to step forward, lean his head forward so his hat hides his face, and say,
"Maybe you should ask them to report, Your Highness. What they've been doing, how they got here, the adventures between the fall of Orville and today, that kind of thing."
And then I kind of put my hand in front of where my mouth would be. It's like, "What can't you do that?"
Your Highness, I have no authority over these people. First of all, you freed me from the authority of their organization. And second of all, why would they answer any questions I have? You're their princess. Do you want to rule Orville?
Well, yeah.
Well, then maybe you should start today.
Okay, all right. Go, calm down. All right. Okay, so I guess we should start with what happened when all the stuff happened
between now
Orville.
And previously when Orville was attacked. Yes, I could hear Duncan Danno's voice from behind his hat. It was not a sufficient way to cover the sound. I'm happy to report to you, Princess, though I do warn you, I think you will be somewhat concerned by what has occurred. Please, it seems you've been on the road for some time. Would you like to join us at the fire?
All right, I guess there's no reason we can't all sit around and be comfortable while we talk about concerning things. Let's sit around a fire.
To introduce the other companions, this is Makka, Deathcap,
right.
Formerly of the Consortium of Bleen, but now Savior of Jassy, we might go with as the title, and Ita of the Empire of Numbers.
And he kind of looks to both of you, Ida and Makka, and he says, "May I ask, are the two of you also exiles from your home nations?"
Yes. Yes, I am.
Excellent. And you?
And Ida just says, "Yes, when I left my home. I did not realize that I was an exile. However, it appears that people from my homeland have been trying to assassinate me or murder me. I do not know exactly technically you would call it, because I do not fully understand their intentions or precisely why they wish to stop me. But yes, yes.
That is most concerning. I can understand why you would want to separate yourself from that. May I ask then, are the two of you seeking the Exiles' moon as well?
Sorry?
I do not
What?
know of this Exiles' moon you speak of.
Interesting. We assumed the people of the Down Low would be more familiar with these visions than we were, but this is strange to me. We will talk more of this, but please, the fire, we have refreshments, not much, but what we have is, of course, yours to partake of. And he kind of like awkwardly looks at Gwendolyn and he says, if partake, indeed you still can. And it's the first time there's like a real, he doesn't really know what to do in this situation. But then he looks to the rest of you and he says, and please, of course, your companions are most welcome. Come. So he gathers you kind of around the fire. As you start to move towards the fire, there is just a shattering of glass and a commotion from behind the cart. Duncan, what do you do?
Duncan is just dodging aside, weapons ready. Like, he's not sure what's happening, so he's got to scope that out first. But it would be the immediate flank to be able to come at whatever it is from a different angle than his companions.
Okay, so you spin around the corner and you see a teenager wearing a uniform that you remember all too well as the sort of like essentially jumpsuit of a squire of the Dawnbreakers. So these are aspirants who are hopeful to join once they've kind of completed the rites and the rituals. Given that you kind of bent your whole life around this idea, like you would have been quite accustomed to wearing this thing. And it is unfortunately somewhat less dignified than the proper Dawnbreaker outfit. Ryan, what does this thing look like?
Oh man. Okay. If you picture the outfits from Demolition Man, if you remember the police outfits that like Rob Schneider wears, where it's a little bit too fitted, it's a little bit kind of like Star Trek infused, a little bit policey, but it ends up just making you look like a dork because it's like it's so yes. Righteous and justified and like I'm here to help, but it does not in any way suggest authority. It's just I'm here to help. Like I'll hug you if you're sad. Seems to be more of its vibe than anything else. It's not black. It's a sky blue. Like the idea is that they could just come in like the weather and help. So it's much more kind of the lighter side of Orvel. Things shift towards black once oaths have been sworn. Great.
So he looks up just like a deer caught in the headlights, like just wide-eyed terror. You can think like a slightly older Toothless from Stranger Things. So just like kind of cherubic features, but also like a tremendously good face for I fucked up, which is what he's currently wearing. And you can see that there's what looks to be a truly ornate and like ancient urn shattered at his feet. And in one hand, he's got a towel. In another hand, he's got a footstool. And he just stands there and he says, seat for princess? I wanted to get a seat for the princess.
And what is your name, aspirant?
Squire Nibs, sir. And you just hear Hadrian say, Nibs. That urn was held in a place of the utmost honor within the treasury, and you ruined it for a footstool? And immediately the gnome and the lady in the duster just burst into laughter. And from out of the cart comes another human who is wearing a tattered royal butler outfit from the Palace of Orvel. Think Thomas from Downton Abbey, so just like a face kind of always like he just bit into a lemon, like no matter how happy he is, just like a little bit off all the time. And Gwendolyn, having spent the most time in the palace of Orvel, we've established that everyone wears that part of the pageantry of the Philosopher King's court is that everyone wears an outfit suited to their profession. So we know this butler is in tails of some sort. But what does an Orvelian butler wear?
They wear kind of an off-white it's kind of shaded to almost match like the stone that's in the palace, with very delicate gold trim, so that they can essentially stay still and remain unseen at any time. Gotcha. So that they're not a distraction.
Okay, amazing. I'll do you one better and say that they also have to wear makeup. So they've got like that French court thing where it's like they wear the white 100%. To like just I love that.
Normally their hair would be dusted. It would be powdered white as well.
Just so that when they press against a wall, they look like that's so gross. Okay, so this guy steps out and he looks like that, but that if you pushed him down a grassy hill. So the outfit is it's still, you can tell it is put together with as much care as it can be, but it's stained and kind of damaged. All the stains have been like scrubbed very viciously, but it's only really made it worse and more threadbare. The gold, like the gold brocade and everything is like has come apart in the way that like fancy rope does, which also just reveals how legitimately cheap it always was. But when it's kept completely,
I imagine it was probably like just like a standard like kind of woven, like cheap grass kind of woven that was probably painted gold over top.
Yeah. And it looks pristine if you don't fuck with it.
Yeah.
And you can see he has attempted to wear the marble makeup. But at this point he's clearly making do with like, he's at the bottom of his makeup pot and he's got like only a little bit left. So it weirdly almost looks more like a bad sunscreen application where it's like his nose and like across his eyebrows and a little bit on his cheeks. But very much a desperate attempt at normalcy. And he just kind of leaps out and says, that was Third Dynasty, almost as old as Orvel itself. Now ground to dust by the slippery hands of an idiot. And Squire Nibs just looks like, again, aghast, but then slowly, still maintaining eye contact with you, Duncan, because I think he's probably more scared of you than these other guys, just like moves over to the fire and just like puts down the footstool and like puts a towel over a log.
Thank you for creating a seat for the princess, Squire Nibs. As you know, wealth has no interest to a Dawnbreaker, and anyone who wears this uniform, Duncan just turns with a steely gaze to the butler, is no fool. Fools speak poorly of Dawnbreakers.
And Hadrian kind of like smiles at that and kind of like nods to you. And the butler glowers back. And in a tone that you have not heard in ages, having been away from court, just gives you of course, very good, sir. And then he begins to like with a little brush and like clearly like a brush made of twigs.
He's such a Thomas.
Just great. starts like scooping up shards of this and like carefully placing them back inside the cart. And together you gather around the fire. So Hadrian quickly runs through introductions as well. You've got obviously him. We have Jasmine Dean, who is an aeronaut. She is one of the engineers responsible for keeping Orvel, all the technology that keeps Orvel aloft working. Having now seen that technology at work in the Spiros station, Nimbus station, you get the sense that not unlike a lot of the technology in Warhammer 40,000, it's likely maintained by Orvelian engineers who have no idea how to replicate it. So they can keep it going, they can keep it healthy, they can like fix it. But it's now very clear that this was not an Orvelian invention, despite what kind of the common lore of Orvel would have you believe.
So Jasmeet is a civil servant, but not a Dawnbreaker, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the only Dawnbreaker in the house is Hadrian.
Okay.
And Squire Nibs is honestly like kind of almost a deputy at this point because that's it. But no, they're the only Dawnbreakers. You have Nerman Locks, the under butler, who Gwendolyn, I don't think you would recognize during your time at the palace.
I don't think I'd recognize any of them.
You'd recognize the head butler, but only because
no one I wouldn't have to deal with directly.
No, you're aware that under butler means that he is he's a mid-range butler. He's not the head butler, but he has more responsibility than most. But you would not know any of those people. You would just know that under butlers exist and are more capable.
I know what their role is.
Exactly.
Probably,
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, you would know largely because like you'd have to know so you could discipline the staff, which is something that I think your father would have been very, very big on.
Yeah.
And the Squire Nibs, obviously, as you already met, and Fallow Ted, who is the gnome mercenary.
Ted. All right.
Ted doesn't say too much. He's quick with a laugh and kind of like a grunt of approval, but in a way that Duncan you would recognize pretty quickly, I think. He's a paid mercenary, and his job is to like defend the caravan and help. He's not really trying to be chummy. He's just like, no, like I'm a professional, and like I like you guys, but like, so kind of a quiet guy. But yes, that is the party as well as a sort of the cart that they've been hauling. We are you're welcomed around the fire. We all kind of settle in. Admittedly, after a few days on the road, you obviously got some time to kind of rest and recover before leaving the clinic after the funeral of Doc Malvern. But you have been on the road for a little while when you encountered these folks, so it is nice to get a proper fire. Also, with this many people, Duncan, I think any fears you might have about being exposed by having a fire are lowered quite considerably because this is a goodly amount of people to be kind of around a fire and to be able to kind of defend it and protect it. Also, you haven't seen a soul since you left the Valley of Eternal Storms, which makes sense because up until you left it, there was no way in or out from the side that you came through. So it's not. It would make sense that exiles from Orvel would be around here because they don't know the terrain at all. But obviously, like random travelers wouldn't likely use this route. So you settle down. Squire Nibs and Nerman bring out a decent amount of food and drink. It is sparse, but it is nourishing. A lot of scavenged food, so berries, likely some squirrel meat, that sort of thing that you could like trap, some rabbit maybe, but it's anything they have is kind of dried and it's road food. It's not anything good, like really hearty, but it's enough to kind of fill a hole in your stomach. Makka, for you, this is actually a bit of a relief, having been around kind of excess in machines and all sorts of highly produced materials. Just finding some people who are like, we made a nourishing soup of some roots is like a fucking breath of fresh air. Being home and lean, like the amount of excess that was occurring really set you aside. So you all have some nourishment if you desire it. Or at least it's brought to you. You can certainly roll checks if you are concerned about it at all, but it is offered to you. And you
Makka digs in.
Yep, digs in. Yeah. All right. Ita, I assume you'd probably be taking your cue off Duncan.
Yeah. Ida, not having had any experience with really any humans other than
literally no
Duncan. Yeah, so I think she'll be following suit.
Duncan would go without for now. He wouldn't do it in a rude way, but he would just be kind of like probably leaning into quote unquote bodyguard duties to stick around the princess. He's still not sure what the fuck this group is doing here. And it's nice that Hadrian's here because Hadrian is more trustworthy, but he doesn't know who the rest are. He's seen mind control stuff going on. Like there's just a lot of question marks about how this group got here. So
totally fair. I will say you get some dirty looks from Jazzmeat and Fallow Ted for kind of not fully engaging. But Hadrian he's not asking any questions. He's not like trying to convince you otherwise. You can tell he's actually kind of giving you respectful distance to do your thing, which tracks with what you would expect of your brief experience with him. Again, this is a guy you would know to see from like across the yard, not like when you were all training and stuff. It's not a guy that you're like pals with, because honestly he would have been one of the popular kids and probably on all the sports teams, so you're aware that he's there, but you wouldn't have had much.
I wouldn't go over and like have a secret handshake. He's just someone that I can respect while also instinctively disliking them for success.
100%. Yeah. And I would argue age-wise you guys were probably squires at roughly the same time. I think he might be a little bit younger than you, but also just like as with a lot of the Dawnbreakers, more concerned with like getting into the job, less concerned with and like into getting to be one than actually like deep diving on the tenets and the history. Okay. So with that, you kind of settle around the fire. You've asked a bunch of questions, obviously leading up to this. I'm curious what you would want to start with.
I think this would be. All right, so most pressing, we're going to get to like everything, but I think it's like, what are you doing right now? How did you come here? Like, I'm talking about like in the last few days, like where are you going? What is your current purpose?
He nods and says, a very good question, Princess, determining the present rather than fixating on the past. We are seeking, and suddenly like Nibs just like out of nowhere yells, "The Exiles moon!" And everyone turns and looks at him, and he just kind of like slinks back behind the cart. Hadrian sighs quietly and gives you, I think, Duncan, a knowing look of like fucking squires. But I also don't think that would ever have been like, you wouldn't Jim take to that, but other Dawnbreakers absolutely would. So he kind of shoots through that glance and then kind of realizes that there's no response that he would normally get to it. And
he shot a Jim take to Dwight because like for Duncan, every squire is an incredibly admirable human who will dedicate their life to this cause, and whatever their failings are the failings of the people training them. So for him, Nibs is probably the best person here. Yeah,
fair enough. So shoots you that look, gets nothing. His lips tighten slightly, and he turns back to the rest of you, and he says, yes, as my excitable squire has said, we are seeking something known as the Exiles moon. Now, Makka and Ita, neither of you have heard of this, but ever since we arrived here in the down low, we started to receive visions of a strange symbol of a tree hung with all manner of ornamentation. Very strange, but very specific. Before long, we found a mark for this very tree carved into a fence around a farm. We gave the farm wide berth, not knowing what kind of reception we would get here in the down low. But as soon as we found the mark, it led us to more and others, and somehow we knew, without knowing, that we were seeking a gathering known as the Exiles moon. Each night we dream of this place, and now some of us, and he kind of shoots a quick glance that all of you catch at Nerman, because most of us see it now with incredible clarity. It is a warm place, a safe place, and there is a woman, a strange woman, beckoning us there with open arms. We do not know the nature of this woman, nor do we know the nature of this gathering, but given how very lost we are down here in this strange world, we thought this would be a good place to start. And Nerman clears his throat, and again, Hadrian just kind of narrows his eyes and says, well, some of us thought this would be a good place to start.
All right, that's great. So, under Butler Nerman, why do you dissent? Please speak openly and freely.
And he looks with kind of a challenging cocked eyebrow to Hadrian and kind of like a, you gonna stop me, bud? way. And Hadrian with, again, just a thin smile of like barely constrained loathing, just kind of nods. And Nerman says, first of all, Your Highness, it is an honor to serve at the feet of the heir to Orvel and the Orvelian line. Exiled though you are, it is a true honor to be in the presence of dignified people. And he does one of those overly rehearsed and unnecessary bows from Orvelian court. Gwendolyn, this isn't something butlers do. This is something that it's one of the many like trained monkey things that your father made all of the various like representatives of their industries do at kind of state dinners, and yet he does it flawlessly. It is a perfect bow. Do you want to roll me a check of some sort? I can see.
Yeah.
I can see that you are having thoughts about this, so I figure the dice can help.
I guess that would probably be perception.
Yeah, I take perception or take history.
I think it's probably.
It's up to you. And Ryan, I think Duncan could actually probably roll on this as well. It's odd. I just don't know that he would care.
Yeah, he'd only want to know if the guy was lying or not. That's the only thing that matters to him. So maybe insight for Duncan?
Yeah. Give me an insight, please.
Yeah, and I think I'll do perception just because it's related to Blean Court. I'm kind of like
Orvelian Court.
Orvelian Court. I'm kind of like, keeping an eye, like, to see if I notice anything in particular that I would know in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly exceptional roll, 24 for Duncan. He's so happy to be looking at a human face because he knows how those move.
He knows how they lie.
I rolled a 10.
10? Okay. You find it incredibly strange, Gwendolyn, but you don't gain any additional information from it. And Ryan, you're trying to see if he's lying about it being a great pleasure to serve at the feet of Orvelian whatever the hell, or...
I think it's the classic just like checking for menace. Like, is there something in here that's not true? Is there something manipulating the princess? It's bodyguard mode. He probably won't be like, oh, there's a conspiracy and I've solved it. It's just like, nah, don't trust this dickhead.
Okay, this reads to you as like next level sycophancy, if that's a word. Like it, and because you rolled extraordinarily well, I'll say like the only lie here, it's like the classic sniveling. Like,
I live to serve, which
I'm kissing your ass. I don't actually live to serve. I just know that that's how I rise. So I'm kissing your ass. But the butler, the entire butlering staff at the palace is not trained in these bows. He clearly learned it on his own, which gives you kind of I think a little bit of an insight into like the lie here is that he knows how to do that bow. He shouldn't, and there's no reason for him to do it other than it's what fancy fuckers do, and he's trying to be a fancy fucker.
So he's a wiener and he's clever. Okay, that's good for Duncan to know.
Yeah. So he rises from that bow, looking very happy that he got to do it, and he says, "Your Highness, you'll have to forgive me. I was involved with these people in a plot to help rescue the king. I was promised a slight elevation in purpose if I did. The term under butler has always grated slightly against me and my abilities and my capabilities.
Would you prefer if I called you a butler? Would that make you tell your purpose more clearly and your thoughts?
Perhaps head butler, Your Highness.
All right, head butler, just give me a report on what I asked of you. Why is this taking so long?
I see that your father's impatience is hereditary.
Excuse me? Give me your report. If you'd like to punish
him, maybe bust him back down to butler and he could work for the head thing.
I think sub-under butler is coming next.
And you can see like both Jasmeed and actually Hadrian are both just fucking living for this. Like, they're both just like, Hadrian is completely like, again, classic Lance Reddick, like completely unknowable face, but there's that glint in his eye of like, this is great. Whereas Jasmeed is just clearly like chuckling into like her mug of water. And his lip twists slightly as though he's remembered where he is. You also get the sense, Gwendolyn, that like he's not used to reporting to a suit of armor. Like, there's probably derision amongst like knights and guards and dawnbreakers and everything else, but like you don't look like a royal, so he's not really treating you like a royal.
Right.
And suddenly his face falls, and he kind of sort of like stands to attention and says, "Of course, Your Highness, you must forgive me. It has been a while since I've been around civilized people. We attempted to save your father, the king. However, it did not go according to plan, and rather than an elevated position within the palace as I was promised and a restoration of order, we instead found ourselves falling. Gracefully, I will admit," he shoots a glance to Jasmeed, he says, "but falling nevertheless into this horrible place. And now we are in search of anything we can find to help us determine our next move, as the first captain is so fond of saying. But this is far from the palace and not at all what I signed up for. So, with respect, I fucking hate it here."
All right, so you're pretty much against everything that doesn't get you back to the palace. It's not like your thoughts on the Exile Moon, like...
My thoughts are I would rather not expose myself and the heroes of Orville and you, Your Highness, to a bunch of odd miscreants we have no real clue about in a place we've never been and have only seen in lunatic visions. Does not seem a tactically sound or healthy thing to trust in or do.
All right, at ease, under Butler. I took away the sub because you showed some deference.
He goes to do the flourish bow, but then thinks better of it and instead just gives you a standard short bow. And I mean, I think based on the way we've talked about these butlers, their bow, we'll say, is just like a cocking of the head to 45 rather than like even leaning forward, because if they're meant to just disappear into the walls, them constantly ducking forward would be like awful, like wall sconces falling on you. So just tilts his head at a 45-degree angle as you're accustomed to, and disappears back behind the cart.
Makka, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Makka, I have a question for you. You know the greatest amount about, say, dream visions, sendings, shared consciousness through the root folk and elsewhere. Could these dreams be from a nefarious source, a good source? Is there any way for us to determine this?
Dreams are often a method for supernatural communication with mortals and more plain folk. Whether the sender of these messages, these dreams, is benevolent or nefarious, I cannot say.
Well, shite. All right. Back to you, Princess.
All right, well... All right, so now we know what you're doing now. I would like, honestly, a play-by-play account of everything that went down once, everything started going wrong up in Orville. I mean, not like from then to here. I just mean like from like the bad stuff up there until you were on the ground, and then it can just be like a highlights.
He nods and he says, "Of course, Princess, understood. I'm sure this will be beneficial for all of your companions, particularly Duncan. I can only imagine, as a member of the Dawnbreakers, how curious you must be about what happened to your fellow Dawnbreakers after the fall. I suppose, Princess, the first thing that is worth mentioning is you died."
This This episode of Curse Code and Crowd Sound was mixed and edited by Laura Hamstra, and the campaign was created by Tom McGee. Our original theme music was composed by Landon Knoblock, and Curse Code and Crown's artwork was created by the brilliant Borovic. If you want to follow our players or our DM on Twitter, you can reach out to Laura at EL Hamstring, Ryan at the Ryan LaPlante, Tyler at Tyler_Hewitt, Tom McGee at McGeeTD, or you can message our whole company at DumDumDice. So please join us again for more Curse, Code, and Crown!
Dum-Dums and Dice has to give a special thank you to the supreme beings of our Patreon at this time. The Half-Blind Prophet, Christopher Little, Sue One, George Dolby, Richard Cranium, Sammy Boy, Orion Birchfield, Scott Garland, Benjamin V, Gavin and Abby McDonald, Logan, Fire Unfriendly, Acrix, Grandma Likes D&D, Alan, Austin Nut Powers Fry, Stabby Stranger, Glitch Trick, Roman Brown, and Jill and Noel LaPlante. If you want your name to be added to this list, you can join our Patreon too at patreon.com/dumdumdice. Thanks to them, and a little bit of thanks to you.